whether it's a client, whether it's a colleague, whether it's a teammate, whether it's another agent. Making sure that everybody has the same expectation is the key to success. Understanding that, okay, we might be here, but we all need to reach to this goal. That is growth. That is understanding.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Excellence Podcast. I have a treat in the house today, a Jax Real producer, leads her own team with great success, a background in banking before she decided to become a real estate agent in 2017, graduated from UNF with a degree in education, Spanish, and marketing, all the tools you need to be a real estate agent in Florida. Ranked number 20 for a large team in Jacksonville Business Journal with nearly $25 million in sales last year. Let's welcome the leader of the McIntosh team, Christina McIntosh, to the show.
Thank you.
I did pronounce that correctly, right?
McIntosh.
McIntosh. But there's no A in there, right?
I know. I married it.
Well, one thing I did notice is the I is actually not capitalized. Is that correct? I was looking at how your social media and stuff, and the I is small because the tendency is to go M, little c, capital I.
There's a funny thing about that. It's supposed to be capital I,
but
there have been all kinds of different
variations. I appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you.
I'm really interested in you growth of a team. I know we talked pre-show a little bit. There's a lot of agents out there. Do they want to start a team? You, of course, said one of the inspirations that you've had in your career. We'll talk a little bit about your pre-real estate career. Is mentoring and grooming people to leadership and success in whatever they're doing. All right. So please definitely expand on that part of it. As I kick off every show, one thing I found interesting, because you kind of, how many, you have like half a dozen agents right now?
Correct.
And they consider that a large team. So to be ranked number 20, and I know there's some large teams in the area, that's a pretty good, I think they should have mid-sized team. I don't know what small team, I guess, is what, 2 or 3 people? I don't even know how they even rank
I don't even look at the numbers. I honestly, is it a right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we go with.
I did notice this year versus last year, there wasn't a lot of crosstalk on not the Jax Real producers, but the Business Journal. There, everyone was worried about what their ranking was. There was a lot of scuttlebutt on Facebook. But anyway, tell us, where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
So I was born in Italy. My dad was in the military. My mom's Italian. So I was born and lived there for 5 years. And then I moved to Spain and lived in Spain for 5 years. And then came here to Jacksonville.
Okay. So about 10, 11 years old before you came to the States.
Correct.
Cool.
English was my third language. It was really kind of a neat upbringing because I was able to live in Europe for 10 years and really immerse in the culture over there.
Mm-hmm.
Then came here and was able to, I had to learn English, which I did speak English because I did go to it was a school in Rota, Spain that was for military children.
Right.
But it was a stretch. So in all of it, it's been a wonderful experience, growing up. By the beach has been one of the biggest pieces. So that's why first.
So your mom's Italian.
Mm-hmm.
Did she speak English, obviously, when she met your dad, or?
No.
No.
Funny thing is, they thought they stood each other up on their first date because they didn't really speak a common language, but they figured that out. My dad's Filipino, so it was a very big stretch. But between Italian, Spanish, they kind of figured that out, and then here we are.
So. Very interesting.
Yeah.
When you came, because I always find this very interesting, and I think I was fortunate enough to, if I've mentioned before in the show, to go to Sweden when I was in high school, not for 10 years, really for 10 days, but because I have an interest in it, I think it heightens my alertness to, like what you're saying, the importance of some of our American kids here, born and raised, need to, kind of get a taste of some of these other cultures to understand like what their culture is and what you know what I'm saying? I think they are really a lot of times what they have here compared to a lot of nations around the world.
I think it's fun to explore and get to experience other cultures.
Mm-hmm.
I have always wanted to continue traveling, and I have passed that on to my children. I think it's important to enjoy where you live, but also be willing to explore other
Yeah,
opportunities.
yeah. There's so many. I often just like to sit down with people from other cultures, nations, and just how they think. We're all brought up a certain way. We have information coming to us. Of course, now it's way too much than it was when I was growing up. And that what are they actually absorbing? What is their perception? Of what it's like to live in Italy or what it's like to live in Spain without, so what a great experience. So coming here to the States, you're already about ready to enter middle school, right? Right. Ending elementary school, going to
Hmm.
middle school. What are some of the challenges that you had then as a young person? Like you said, English wasn't your primary language.
It was not. So coming here, it was interesting because it was completely a different cultural experience. The way school was set up was different. However, I was very fortunate to have parents that were very encouraging. So even though I did not understand or necessarily speak the language as well, adapting was a big deal and having patience. So with that, it has helped me throughout life. Those were
Yeah.
life skills that have helped me till today. So,
There was something my wife sent me the other day. It was a reel, some psychologist talking about when children have challenges, as adults, it doesn't affect our brain as much as it does as a younger person, but it sets these tracks in our brain, the challenges of overcoming, whether for you, obviously coming to the United States, well, actually that's your third country,
hmm,
right? Italy, Spain, and then come to the
yep.
United States. So you're having these cultural changes early in your life and then having a language barrier. I mean, that's to me, that's a huge obstacle to overcome. You have to chip away and, work at it. Obviously your parents did between the two of them.
Yeah.
But as a young person at 10 years old, and you're learning this, but I imagine by the time you're in your high school, I imagine English is a little more fluid or
Oh,
how you
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. I was fortunate to have speech classes back then. That's what
Mhm.
they were called. I don't know what they are today, but,
Right.
and so I was able to work with speech and figuring out different ways of pronouncing things. And spelling used to be actually one of my worst subjects, and ended up, spell check was a great thing because then it helped
Yeah,
actually seeing it and being able to learn it,
right.
adjusting my expectations, but also willing to adapt. As a young child, I think that most children really want to explore and learn and
Mm,
want to understand. So that's kind of the mentality I took. I'm in this country. I need to learn. I need to adapt. I
right.
need to understand. With that said, we had pasta and rice every night for dinner. So, it was good. It's fine.
But do you to go back to so now, I mean, as a young person at 14, you've made some major changes in your life, did multiple cultures, you got, your parents' cultural, differences and
Hmm.
all that stuff. And I can just imagine you being a fairly confident teenager because you've like seen a little bit of the world versus a lot of your classmates.
Correct.
Yeah.
I actually didn't realize how little sometimes people travel until I moved here because
Mm,
even though we lived in Spain for 5 years, we went to Portugal, we went to France, we went to Germany. So there was always a level of travel
right.
that was included.
Right.
Countries were closer, but I take that here. And when I get a chance, we travel, whether
Yeah.
it's by plane or by car or by boat, we will try to,
The
reach
one
a different area.
the one thing I think is unique about the United States, which I mean, it relates to real estate too, because we're dealing, although Florida's kind of that, Florida is the melting pot to me, and
Hmm.
from a lot. But you can go around the country, whether you're in, I was in Michigan. We were talking about Quicken Loans before the show. Quick, I grew up in New England, right? My mom's from Jellicoe, Tennessee, so when I would go see my cousins and their twang that they had, but you go to California, it's almost like there is these little cultural differences because over history, people don't realize, well, I think that they do if they really think about it. Different groups, Europeans came and settled in different areas. Obviously, the New York was a Dutch colony, and then you had New England, and then so you had these groups of people that over a couple hundred years have grown from that culture. So you can actually go and touch some of those little things, subtle, but they're there if you look for them.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. But that's the neat thing about
Yeah.
exploring.
Yes.
And the ability that not everything the way I look at things is not always right.
Mhm.
So look for what is a good thing and a positive thing, no matter where you are. Enjoy it. Enjoy the moment. Enjoy the place. I was recently in Chicago, beautiful city.
Mhm.
Really enjoyed being there. Weather was great.
Mhm.
It's part of growing and developing. Teaches you patience. It teaches you understanding. It such an enrichment if you're able to travel. And it could be as simple as getting in the car and going to next state and just
Yeah.
figuring out. I'm always up for adventures like, oh, where should we go next? Where should we go hiking? Should we go whitewater rafting? Should we,
Right.
you know,
Right. 100%. And I still think a majority, I think the statistic is still out there. Majority of Americans still live within 50 miles of where they were born. I think that's still a major statistic. I'm sure it's deleting a little bit, especially after COVID. I think a lot of people started moving. Obviously, we know here in Florida, which is what we're talking about, real estate. We're going to get into. So you decide to go to UNF. What did you actually just start off with? Hey, education, Spanish, and marketing. Is that just, or did it just kind of evolve into that major?
it somewhat evolved. I wanted to start in education. I wanted to teach. And then marketing has just really always appealed to me.
Hmm.
Really find it fascinating to see how people react to situations or what makes something successful or doesn't. So that's kind of the track I took, understanding that I needed to finish college before I could start my life. And that's kind of how I took it on. I graduated from UNF and then was very fortunate to start a banking career. Went through a management training program. It was a very select training program at the time. Barnett Bank
Yeah.
was in town and had a huge, huge complex on the South Side area. And I was able to go through their management training program right after
Is that the
college.
same complex as now the Bank of America complex? Is that the same?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. And everything in there was green because Barnett Bank was green and white lollipops. It was called Emerald City.
Yes.
And it was connected by bridges and paths and walkways.
Right.
But it was a wonderful first career step. Was in the banking industry for 25 years before I decided I wanted to change.
Wow. When you were at UNF or even, what kind of careers did you imagine as a young person doing? I mean, was banking like, oh, I want to go be, I don't know if anybody jumps in, I want to become a banker, I want to go work for the bank. Cause to me, having worked for Ameris Bank, it was great in the mortgage department because they're kind of separate. Working in the bank and as strict as some of the rules are, I would not be able to play with that.
So I didn't know what position I really wanted to take. I knew that I wanted to help people. I
Mhm.
knew I wanted to learn more about the banking environment. So that's kind of the leap that I took. Even though my degree was in education and I thought I wanted to become a teacher, then banking kind of lured me away and started my career in one of the entry level leadership positions. But at the end of the day, when we talk about banking, there's so many aspects and so many roles that I actually became one of their corporate trainers. And that's marrying my education
Mhm.
into the banking world.
Yep.
So I was there during the merger of when Barnett Bank merged with Nations Bank and then Bank of America. We would give it in manuals and said, here, learn this weekend. You're flying out to LA on Monday morning. Good luck. But without kidding aside, it
Mm.
was a wonderful experience to travel, wonderful to be able to educate. And from that, it kind of spun off to leadership training. So I did a lot of soft skill and leadership training and was very involved in the development of quite a bit of those skills. And I would work with local leadership as I traveled through my career and went through
Mhm.
different financial institutions. I was able to work with local leadership to help develop leaders for the next step.
Yeah. Yeah. What actually, I had to hear what led you to banking. You kind of was it just, hey, I graduated, I need a job. And then you saw an advertisement and then you're there for 25 years or?
So when I was in college, I actually had a friend that worked for Barnett Bank, and he said, "Hey, they're looking for part-time customer service rep." I said, "Sure." They're like, "If you speak Spanish, you get
Oh, they love you.
more right." So I joined a team and was hired on, and because of my Spanish speaking ability, I was able to start right away, and
Mhm.
so I did that part time.
Mhm.
And then when I was finishing my college career, that's when they came to me and said, "Hey, would you like to apply for the management training program?" At the time, I thought I was going to become a teacher. And then I went through a very rigorous interviewing process and
Mhm.
test taking process. And they selected me as one of the candidates. And I
Cool.
spent over 12 months getting paid to learn and develop my skills as well.
Oh, awesome. I mean, that's a master's degree right there. I mean, when you really think about it, I mean, because you're hands on
Absolutely.
and doing that, what an opportunity to fall into in that case. Hopefully you remember your friend who led you that way.
Yep, I
Um,
certainly do.
for the, we mentioned a little earlier, I wanted you to expand on, I mean, 25 years in there, obviously, you not only were consistently training, but you were being trained by, you know, huge corporations that have a huge budget for that. What were you able to take in from that in your day-to-day operations of your team that you have now, but also as a real estate agent dealing with clients every day?
Absolutely. So, one of the biggest things I think that was a big help, and I carry it on, is setting expectations. Whether it's a client, whether it's a colleague, whether it's a teammate, whether it's another agent. Making sure that everybody has the same expectation is the key to success. Understanding that, okay, we might be here, but we all need to reach to this goal. That is growth. That is understanding. So early on, setting the expectations, understanding expectation, communication, and making sure everybody was on board and had the same vision is was super important back then, and it's still used. I was very fortunate at the time to get certified in what matters first things first,
Mhm.
which was a Covey skill. And I actually went around the country and trained it along with other communication skills, part of the soft training of leadership group.
So, well, simplify that for me.
Hmm.
The expectation and the Covey training you're talking about, what exactly was the bank trying to get across to their
For
staff?
absolutely for expectations is it was very simple. Here's the job description, but this is what it looks like. This is what it feels like. A lot of times we see generic job descriptions, right?
Mm,
And it's been a long time since I've interviewed, but what does it look like, right? So then setting those expectations and understanding. The bank at the time was trying to make sure retention was huge. Hiring someone costs a lot more than retaining someone, right? So once you hire them, you
very
want to
few
retain.
companies actually realize that.
I was
Some have
very
to spend a
fortunate.
lot of money to figure that out.
I was very fortunate that I worked with good companies
Mhm.
that took care of their employees.
Yeah.
From that point on, that was part of it is how do we retain good people and how do we help them grow if they want to grow? Because development is important so many aspects, but leadership, not everybody wants to be a leader, not everybody wants to take the helm. Some people want to sit back and understanding that everybody has different buttons that are important to them. So keying in on those is what makes somebody understand and retain. Retention stays pretty strong with that.
I love the way, and this might be a slight tangent to our show, the job description part of it. But really, like you said, there's a job description or a description of what a real estate agent should do or supposed to do. But there was a statistic the other day, I heard it, I don't know, where it was on a podcast or something, it just crossed over and made total sense. And then when you were talking about the job description, I wanted to share it. Women, when they read a job description and they're, looking for jobs, they almost feel they have to fit that job description nearly 100% when they read it, even though it's written by some HR department who may not even have anything in the hiring decision. The hiring person, obviously, in most cases, hey, I'm in their mind, they have someone who would fill that role and what they want them to actually do. Men will apply for jobs where I think they're like 30 or 40% of what that job description was. It was very interesting, the dynamics of that. But I think it's the realization of getting outside the box. Whether you're the hiring person or you're the person reading that job description going, well, I don't necessarily know how to do that, but I've done these other things. I can learn how to do that part because I'm really good at this other part, which is really the title of the job. That's at least that's the thinking I see. I read some of these job descriptions and I'm like, okay, you're not going to find the chances of you finding that person that fits that every box on that is not likely. you're going to hire somebody that doesn't necessarily have those skills, but you're going to teach them because of, obviously the resources that a large corporation like that would have.
And that's very true. Job specific, meaning if you're looking for a chemist, a scientist, or someone that, obviously very specific skills.
Mhm.
But if we're looking for customer service, if we're looking for retail, if we're looking for things that to help grow your business in a different aspect, then some of those skills are transferred. And that is one key that people need to, I think, and they, I think, do realize, but it's important. Try it. You never know. And having a
Right.
conversation with a recruiter, it doesn't hurt
Mhm.
just to understand what they're looking for. And it
Right.
might be a good fit, it might not, but at least you have a better understanding. With real estate and with any position, I think part of the disconnect sometimes is not understanding what is expected, but also not sure what to do. So, training has always been a crucial part
Mhm.
of the development and the learning and the retaining.
Since we're on the expectation part, all right, let's flip this now to real estate.
Correct.
When you this thought of expectation, when you're taking on, and you can go either way with this, a buyer, seller, maybe you can use an example for us. How are you making sure that you and your customer are actually, you're letting the customer basically know, hey, these are that way, we're talking about expectations here. Okay. Or, because we could talk about, hey, we're going to put your house on the internet. We're going to do this and do that. But what is the how how do you have that conversation with a possible client, whether it's a buyer or seller?
Either way, buyer or seller, I always have an introductory. In that meeting, I always ask the client, what are you looking for? And making sure that there is a good fit. And from there, discussing the different expectations. They have expectation, I have expectation. Do they meet? Do they marry? Does it make sense? So, in a way, whether it's a buyer or seller, it's always very important to have that crucial first conversation
Mhm.
and making sure that in order for me to perform my best as an agent, I need to make sure I understand what obviously selling it's one degree and one avenue that you go through. And then with buying, it's a different one. But asking those open-ended questions, understanding what is at the core. Interestingly enough, a lot of buyers sometimes, and this has happened quite a bit, I always ask, what is your must-haves, non-negotiables? And then tell me what would like to have. Ends up being that usually one will have a stronger say about one thing or another, and maneuvering through that to where they both are happy.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Dealing with a husband and wife
yep,
situation. Yeah. We know that obviously there's only a very small percentage of the number of real estate agents. Everyone keeps throwing out this 12,000 numbers, 12,000 real estate agents in Northeast Florida, but we really know there's only a small percentage of that, single digit percentage that are really making the bulk of it. Do you feel conversations, like that is really probably a pretty big differentiator from someone who is a Jack's real producer type versus someone who is not and just not getting there?
I feel that for me and for my clients, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's a huge defining factor because we are then identifying what is the process, what do they want, and is it realistic? Does it meet the expectation? And what is the next step? So, versus just talking to someone for 5 minutes and then taking to show them properties and not being on target at all.
Right.
I think that creating a process, whatever that process is, has to work for the person. And most agents, I would hope that that's where they would start. But I will tell you that in interviewing quite a bit of people that are starting out, that has been a huge challenge. You get your license, you're like, great, now I have a license. And now what? So, in order to successfully grow and develop your business, get with a good mentor. Make sure that you understand whether it's joining a team or even if you want to do it independently, but create a process that works.
To put it out there, give a real kind of tool for our agents who may be listening, and they want to set these expectations. But I know, as you know, a lot of new agents, it's one thing when you get a referral and you're more or less in control, right? Someone's put an endorsement on you. Hey, you need to use Christine, and now, so when they call you and you start kind of saying, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to meet and have coffee, or we're going to have a conference call and we're going to talk about your expectations. For those agents who their first thing, well, they call me and they just want to go see this house, and letting the client do the leading. How do you coach them to kind of get back in control of that, to have that? It could be a 5-minute conversation. It could be an hour-long conversation, going over expectations and get back in control.
Having an understanding of the question, right? So you get the call and, oh, I want to go see this house. That's awesome. I would love to go see the house with you. But tell me a little bit more what you're looking for so that if there's other options, that we can also look at those.
Okay. All right. I will take that answer. You were short with me. All right. But I wrote down something else, and then I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit,
Mhm.
because you did mentors and coaches is always on my thing there. We do want to talk about that, but I used retention.
Mhm.
And, a lot of agents think they want to have a team. I've had many of the greats on that everyone can mention in the area. And I guarantee one of their biggest core things for growth over time is retaining good people in your core and continuing to grow from that. With your experience in banking and understanding that the bank realized how much it costs to bring somebody on versus training somebody up to do it, or move them to a position that they're actually better at, is cheaper than trying to hire somebody in there. It takes a large corporation with bean counters that are tracking all that and everything else to come to that conclusion. Even though it's common sense in life to me, but the smaller people don't often realize that. But anyway, as a team, as a real estate team that you're building right now, which you started in 2017, and you've been at Ingalls Volkers not quite 3 years, right?
Sure.
Did you start the team when you came to Ingalls, or did you already have
No, I started it
or
when I
Ingle?
Ingle and
I
Volker's
always want to
First
add the
Coast.
S on there. I'm sorry, Corey. Always want to add the S on.
um,
Ingle.
I started actually at Watson.
You did start the team at Watson.
Yes.
Okay. So understanding the retention part and building off, the layers of those core people. What is some of the mindset as a leader when you come in every day, every week, every month, that you want to deliver to them, and the value that they're getting value from you, because that's why they joined your team. It's named after you, right?
And funny enough, it wasn't because I wanted it to name it after me. It was
Mhm.
just one of those, oh, we have a team, so what should we call it?
Yeah.
So,
Right.
but with that said, part of the retention is, in my opinion, is making sure what value do I add? You know, being a team leader is more than just being there to answer questions, but also helping them understand and guide. The offset of that as a team leader is that you do see and you do want people to do well. And sometimes they will leave the team. But the question is it a good fit for the team? Does it make sense?
Mhm.
Want, positive, influential team working together type. Some people are not made to be on teams, and that's okay. They're more of an individual type of a worker. And if that works for them, that works for them. However, I will say that everybody on my team, we all pitch in, we all help each other. We have an ongoing group chat. We see statistics, we share them. We always discuss what's out there, what's happening, what's going on, what we're seeing, what we're not seeing. It makes us well rounded.
Right.
And that is the value that I think I add to my group. I'm available 99% of the time, I'm available all the time, as well as being able to answer questions, but then having them understand why, what's the answer, or why we're doing something. Those are huge components.
Yeah.
The understanding, and then obviously growing and developing, and how could we get better? How do we ask the right questions? What questions do we? Or starting from the beginning, the expectations that are set. If we need to stage a property, then we work together to take care of it. Resources, we share resources. So there's quite a bit that we provide as a team, but then that I also help with as a team member.
Do you feel, and again, not every agent, because some agents, have a background or whatever, and they kind of can grasp what's going on. They understand they got to, how to market, or, I know my wife, she basically, works off referrals, and one thing led to another, and her business has grown because she has was in corporate America like yourself for a long time, doing marketing and that kind of thing. And it just naturally came to her. Others they can be lost a little bit in the team environment, makes them feel like they're not, because you can feel like you're out on an island, basically. That's what I'm trying to get to, is being part of the team. It sounds like, and the culture is they want to be part of it because, hey, they know there's a sounding board. Someone actually, when they say something, there's actually someone listening on the other end with intent and wanting to obviously assist or whatever, whatever, or just hear them. Right.
Absolutely. That's the one of the hardest things in starting a career or any business really by yourself is
Mhm.
you feel like you're an island and what do I do next? Being part of a team is incorporating and understanding that, yeah, somebody's listening to me. Somebody might have an answer. Maybe we can brainstorm together. How do we diversify our portfolio? How do we make sure that this makes sense? Not only that, but from a marketing standpoint, it's not only my touch point, but everybody's on the team.
Right.
So we try to share all our listings, share, what our buyers are looking for. What is the trend that's going on?
I'm going to transition because mentors and coaches was on there. You mentioned mentors and coaches.
Hmm.
Tell us about, you early on. You were at Watson for but almost 3 years there, right? If I remember the LinkedIn a little bit. Who were some of the people, or maybe, if you don't want to mention names, or, what were some of the things those mentors and coaches did for you?
So I was, I'm very observant and I paid attention to some of the top producers as well as, the broker there. He was great. Learned quite a bit from him as well as some of the other agents that were there. But then I also created a process on my own. Truly be told, my biggest mentor was someone that actually was my boss 20 something years ago,
Yeah.
teaching me life skills
Hmm.
and how to think about things.
Hmm.
Interesting story is she called me last year and said, "Hey, we're thinking about downsizing and retiring. Would you be interested in working with us?" Went over there, worked with them, got their house under contract, and they are now happily retired and moved away. And I was able to help them with their purchase in their new city,
Right.
as well as the sale of their property here. Very discreet, but at the same time, it was an honor for me to help her.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, and correct me if I didn't hear correctly.
That's a play on words.
Yeah. You observed, you took a little from here, took a little from there, and then made them your own
Correct.
in the process. And I really think every agent that's out there that's been in the business for a little bit and having any sort of success, that is what we're doing. We talked again a little bit what the importance of new agents coming on is you were with Watson for a while, so you saw a lot of new agents to really, take the time to have a coffee, have a lunch, go in the office, whatever, with some of these people have been doing it a while, have seen a lot, have had enough at bats that they can actually, understand their experience. Cause I think you need to do that. You have to do something a little bit to understand what you actually saw. We see a lot of things, but sometimes we don't have a wall to stick them on yet until we actually experience that situation ourselves. And we go, oh yeah, I remember that from someone so told me to do that, but I didn't know where to ever apply it. Right. But how important is, the new agents to write even before becoming a real estate agent, really, if you're listening to this and thinking about becoming a real estate agent, you need to like sit down with some top producers and get a real good expectation, right?
I'll never forget someone said, "Oh, well, you work for yourself, you make your own hours." And I'm like, yes, but you have to be available when your buyers want to go see property. You have to be available when your sellers are ready to meet. So to an extent, yes, you do control your calendar.
Mm.
But at the same time, you also have to have some flexibility. Because if you're not available here, 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 then they're like, well, I'm going to go find somebody that is.
Right.
Not to mention that deals and offers come at all crazy times. With that said, it is truly crucial to create some sort of streamlined process, but to sit down and talk to a professional that does it full time and truly ask them, what does it take to become an agent? Because it's not just opening a door and showing a house. There's so much. It's like an iceberg. You see the tip, but there's so much that happens underneath
Right.
that in the back, that's our job is to make it as seamless as possible. But the sleepless nights, the racking your brain of what else can I do? What needs to be done? How can we make it what I call show ready?
Right.
It's super important.
And dealing with the personalities. the husband and wife differences, right? He wants a 3-car garage, but she wants something else. And, where are you going to find the happy medium? Because there aren't many houses that have both. You stress over that.
Actually had quite a bit of buyers after they meet with me initially and they come up with this list, and I always provide them a copy. They go back usually within 2-3 days. Come to realize that we probably are not on the same page, but we want the same thing. So now here's our new list because they have had now an open conversation. I
Right.
didn't realize a half bath was so important to you. Well, I didn't realize a 3-car garage was so important to you. And that's the key component. If
Right.
I can get people to talk, that's what you want,
Right.
because then they know what they're looking for and then they can really find what they.
Have you ever had an aha moment when talking to, or maybe, if you ever shadowed? I think I think that's important for every new agent, at least, talking to a lot of top agents when they first start to, spend 2 or 3 weeks and really truly shadow someone.
Correct.
And but that aha moment, talking to a mentor or coach or whatever, and either they told you or they did something and you're like, whoa, I never even thought of that. I never even came to top of mind at all.
Absolutely. There have been quite a bit of aha moments because I always feel like you're learning every day.
Mhm.
A good day is when you learn something new.
Right.
So, one day I had a listing and the agent called, very kind agent, and said, I walked away with the key in my pocket, did not realize. So that was an
That
aha
happens.
moment.
Yeah.
Okay, let me meet you somewhere and take the key and bring it back because I had other showings happening.
Right.
So having a contingency plan in place of what could happen. That was one of the
Do you put
biggest
2 keys in the lockbox now?
no. Strategically, very fortunate to have a team that we are dispersed throughout. So sometimes it's a quick SOS, who's closest.
Yeah.
I had a seller get locked out of a home one time. The agents showing the property didn't mean to, but locked the garage door and the front door. The sellers came home and they always just come through the garage door, and guess what? They couldn't get in.
Yep.
Had a very supportive team, and Engel Volkers has helped. Our offices being spread out has also helped. I've had people that are not on the team that are like, hey, I won't mind helping. I live in the neighborhood. Let me
Right.
go unlock
Yeah.
the door for you.
Yeah.
So using your resources has been one of the biggest aha, and thinking quickly outside.
Hey folks, this episode was produced by Streamline Media, the #1 media company for helping brands generate content that converts. I knew I wanted to start a podcast to reach more people and bring value to the world, but I did not have the time or the knowledge. Streamline Media became my secret weapon to building my show. They handle all my back-end work, production, and strategies to keep my show going strong. If you're in the real estate business and looking to make content that generates more leads and brings in more revenue, check out the Streamline Media link in the show notes and discover how partnering up can supercharge your path to real estate excellence. Well, that goes in, kind of opens another little Pandora's box, so to speak. How important have you realized, maybe maybe you never really think about it before you became an agent, but I go back to something Patty Ketchum said on the show, a year and a half ago. I think she was episode 20 something, 30 something. And she said it's not the buyers and sellers that'll make and break your career. It's the other agents.
Correct.
And because we were talking about being part of the board and you're being active and so forth, but meeting the other agents. She was off on her little island and she was okay because her and her husband had a real estate background. And she had done mortgages. She was on her little island, and she really, for the first 10 years of her real estate career, didn't go to the board of realtors. But when you're out there today, whether it's other agents at Watson's or Engel Volkers, but just the agent field in general, now, your top producer, how important it is to mix and mingle and get to know these other agents, even though they are working for other brokerages.
It's super important. At the end of the day, we all have the same goal in mind. If you have a seller, you're wanting to sell a property. If you have a buyer, they want to buy the property. And it's that collaborative effort that makes a deal, makes it to the end.
Mhm.
So working together, learning and understanding and getting to know them is very important.
Do you try to get out to socials and try to meet the agents? Or do you have, I mean, do you have time to do it? Whether it's a social event or even just the educational events, because you have breaks and stuff to kind of go and mix and mingle and say hi to some of the other agents.
Absolutely. I always, when I'm able to, I try to go to the events. Sometimes, especially when it's after hours, if there's other things going on,
Mm,
then it might be a little bit more of a struggle. But it's important to get to know them. Although, even these big social events, I always like to get to know people one on one. Getting to know them, getting to understand them, and having conversations one on one is huge. So,
Well, especially if that some people brought up on the past shows, if there's an agent that really is good in Ponte Vedra or Nassau County or so forth, and all of a sudden now you've got a listing out there. Well, I don't normally tread that turf out there. So, to be able to call on this person that you met at a social, had some time that willing to pour into you. Oh, hey, this is what you should expect. Put this in your list, whatever the little things that you may not understand because it's not an area you normally work.
absolutely, it's again going back to your resources, right?
Mhm.
And having that connection that you can pick up the phone and say, "Hey, can you help me here?" Most of the agents are more than willing to help. And it's that collaborative effort of understanding that. The key, for example, there is a property that we currently have listed. And I'm actually this week going to work on doing a collaborative open house for all the properties that are in the same area.
Yeah.
So that, hey, if even it might not be my house, but if it's somebody else's house that went under contract and we've all helped each other, we're almost willing to help each other again next go round. So it's putting the houses, whether it's buyers, sellers, is leveraging and understanding and going out there and showcasing what you have.
hmm I think that I don't know if it's underestimated. Maybe some people just don't want to put the work in it. Maybe that, I don't know, maybe other agents. I think that's a brilliant thing to do. You have these neighborhoods where you have two or three, four houses that are listed, which is a lot for a neighborhood right now with inventory as low as it is. But, you know, to bring attention to the area. You may have agents who don't know that subdivision, but because you're having four open houses at the same time where they can go through and walk through those houses for future purchase or buy, it just makes more sense. And obviously advertising. Now you have four people posting, come to our neighborhood and see these four houses. It just, I mean, that to me, that makes a lot of sense. I think should be done more. I do see people doing that, but they should be done. I think could be done more. We're kind of working backwards because we did move forward quickly with a lot of things. But tell us, you're at Watson. I guess a really question. I'm going to kind of bundle maybe a couple questions here into one big one. What you know now, almost 6 years, right, in the business. What you know now versus what you knew 6 years ago, 6.5 years ago, whatever it was when you walked in the door at Watson. What are two or three things you'd be telling yourself?
No deal is ever the same,
Mhm.
ever. So understanding that is key. Every deal is different, every single one. Understanding that you are able to figure out by asking question. It's so important to make sure that you ask the right question, but then create a process. Early on, I was on an island and felt like I don't know what to do. Yes, I know what I studied. Yes, I know what a test I took, but what is the process to writing a contract? I understand what it says, but how do I write one? To what is the process to get it to completion and how do I get it to closing success? There's so many different pieces and tabs to that whether you're in a team or whether you're in an individual, create that process for yourself and that works. And understanding that's always a work in progress.
Right. 'Cause every deal is different.
Every deal is different.
And that process, you might do step 3 before you do 2 because that's the
That's
difference.
what makes sense for that deal.
Yeah.
So working through that. And don't be afraid to interview your buyers and sellers and making sure that there's someone you want to work with.
What tip would you give for that new person to create because they haven't done enough at bats, right? It's not, I mean, if a new person does 12 deals in their first year, wow, that's great. But there's 12 different deals there, and you're like, well, how do I create a process? I had all these different 12 different situations, right? How would you recommend for that person in their first month or two to at least create that baseline process? And then obviously you can deviate from that.
So I will say that schedule your time, especially when you're starting out, and actually, really throughout the entire career. You want to schedule your time. What are you going to do? You're going to get up and work out or whatever it is that you do. But when you get to work, what does that look like? Is it making 10 phone calls? Is it writing 10 letters? Is it checking the MLS and seeing what's on the market, what's new, what's, when gone under contract? Know your process. Know that you need to make sure you schedule your time so that then you do have time to have lunches or breakfast or brunch to network and grow your business that way. But understanding that you need to put the effort. Things are not just going to fall in your lap. I mean, they might, and that's low hanging fruit, which is great. But what you put in it, you're going to come out of it.
In trying to explain, which I imagine, when you sit down with some new agents, and well, maybe you don't, but I think just hearing what you're saying, you probably, as we lead into marketing,
Mhm.
as I had Britt O'Donohue with Landmark on there, and it's like, real estate is like a blank slate when it comes to marketing. If you can find your niche, your niche in marketing that gets you deals, go for it. 10x it, right? Grant Cardone, just double down on, triple down, 10x on that, and chase it. But obviously, sometimes it takes a long time to find that niche, right? Like just playing the lottery, and all of a sudden you find it one day, and like, oh, these are the numbers. I need to play these every day now, right? Just to when you're working with an agent, they may see someone else, that coming walking the door, they're new, couple months in, they're seeing this top producer, they're seeing you and seeing how you market. They start trying that, doesn't really bear fruit. But how do you work someone through, especially someone who's been in corporate America and not doesn't necessarily have the out of box entrepreneurial type mindset? They have to break those barriers, right? Work through them. They're going to have to find this niche that just because door knocking works for Sally doesn't mean it's going to work for John.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that is where
Mhm.
trial and error. Try something. If it doesn't work, try something. With that said, be very purposeful of what you're doing and understanding if I do this, then the consequence is this, then my expectation is this. And kind of go through the list of
Mhm.
what ideas you have. I always say idea dump and then go through and say, okay, what's realistic? Yeah. Look at your budget. You should spend money to make money. It's a common known. You can't market if you don't have the money. But at the same time, the kind of, if I don't close my first deal, then I don't have money. So I always say that the expectation is the first 6 months. If you close a deal, that's awesome, but use that time to ramp up. It's very difficult, I believe, for agents to start off and not have a safety net of some sort because at the end of the day, everybody wants to have some sort of income. And that's what they need to think through or set themselves up prior to taking that. Now, by joining teams, you do have that support because there are things that the team does. The team leader will spend their money to help promote everybody on the team or
Right.
should.
Through buying leads or some sort of
Marketing,
team,
correct.
yeah,
Whether
generation.
it's to team events, team marketing, helping set you up and your expectations so that you're understanding what the next steps are. There's a whole slew of things that can be done. It's individualized or should be individualized per person. I always meet with my team members one on one every quarter and we kind of discuss what are we going to target? What are we trying to hit? What is going on? What's working? What's not working? And then brainstorm ideas.
Yeah, break us through, what a coaching session again, so the questions, right? If you're coaching, you're asking questions and getting the agent you're mentoring on the other side or coaching, to rise up because you're trying to find this niche
Mm-hmm.
marketing for them. What are when you because you don't want to just mail the postcards out one time. Oh, I didn't get a call and then stop. A lot of the things that we do in this industry take time. I mean, you just got to keep the consistency is the word, right? Social media, you got to consistently do that. Then eventually, who knows, it might take 2 or 3 years and then you'll consistently get leads from it eventually. But how do you have that initial coaching session and then set expectations for the marketing campaign that you may be electing to try?
And sitting down and going, okay, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? Numbers are one thing, but it's celebrating small successes along the way. I think it's very important as well. So having those open-ended questions like, okay, so we're sitting down today and what have you done? What does your day look like? And this is for a newer agent.
Mhm.
What does the structure look like for you? If somebody says to me, oh, I wake up and when I feel like it, I'll just peruse MLS and
Stop by Starbucks on the way to the
uh,
office
right.
and
How much time did you really work?
right.
And so that's the key. And how do we create a process or a work area environment that works for you? And then discussing, okay, you want to market or farm this area. So what are some things that we can do? Let's try writing cards. Let's try that. The biggest thing, I think, the biggest influencer is who the person is in going and out and meeting the people that are there. So if you are in your neighborhood, get to know where you live and get to know the people around
Great point leads into, again, some very top real estate agents. I've had some say they actually regret they didn't actually work on their sphere of influence earlier. What are some of the things that because I think obviously I think in a lot of things in life, our biggest obstacle is ourselves. What we're willing to do, what we like doing, what we feel comfortable doing, and then what actually is, actually going to create business. What are some little things, some subtle things that the agents can do to create that influence, especially in their neighborhood? I think a lot of I know it because I live in a neighborhood with a lot of agents. I don't see their stuff. They're not working that neighborhood. So if they're not working the neighborhood you live in, what neighborhood are you working in? Right?
Well, and there's strategies around it, right? It's who are you marketing to? Who are you targeting? A lot of it could be word of mouth. And so not everybody, depending on how big the neighborhood is.
Mhm.
But if you don't believe in yourself, who's going to believe in you? That's the
Right.
number one thing. So as a new agent, if you don't believe in yourself and if you don't believe that you can do it, how are you going to get somebody else to believe in you? Understanding that that is going to be key. And then making sure that you have the resources, a good broker, a good team leader that can help you and can help you maneuver through the process of their first deal. Those are key components. If you are looking for a certain type of client, or if you have a sphere of influence that you network with, it could be if you're a firefighter and you like, hang out with other firefighters, then that might be your box.
Mhm.
But what are you doing to grow that business within that?
So taking that, leading into Engel and Volkers,
Yes,
you decide to go over there now. You've been there
almost 3 years.
almost 3 years, two something years and some months. What are some of the things that Engel and Volkers, because, I have had Corey on the show. I don't know if you listened to that episode. He likes, their mindset is opposite of Watson.
Mhm.
Right? They want the experienced agent who's doing business and take them to that
Next
next
level.
level. I assume that's what you saw, and you can explain. I'm going to finish the question, but I'm going to lead you into explaining why. But why Ingalls and Volkers for you? And because I assume you felt it was going to move you forward. But then again, and this was probably going to be part of your answer. But what are some of those tools that Ingalls and Volkers has at their fingertips to nurture the things that we were just talking about?
So, correct. They do target more active producers that have met a certain threshold. When Corey reached out and we chatted, it felt like a good fit. But interestingly enough, the international feel for me, that was my biggest reason and my biggest leap. And my mom's from a small town in Amalfi, the Amalfi Coast in Italy, and they have a shop there. So I remember when I went in 2019 pre-COVID, we were there. We went on a family vacation, got to spend time there, and there was a little Engel and Walker shop right in the Amalfi Coast. So I did not forget that, and I actually went in and talked to people and chatted with them. So it was part of that. Is part of the I speak three languages. So how can I leverage what I'm doing and touch base with other parts of the world? And I can truly tell one of my clients, you know what, your listing is not only going local, but it's going international.
Mhm.
And it does. So those are pieces that I really liked about Engel and Volkers. Watson was fantastic. Great use of tools. Engel and Volkers has also amazing tools. The ability to coordinate all the different pieces of how to get the leads and how they work through the different processes and the different pieces that they have are very beneficial as well. It's almost taking it to the next level, if you will.
Mhm. Well, I would imagine as you said, what is it specifically that you in your personal marketing? I mean, your team, the people that are part of your team, your group. I mean, they, like you said, everyone has their thing. They got to find their thing. There's some. I mean, I imagine quite a few of them are still trying to find truly what that golden niche is. But what is it? What are the things that you find right now for you are the most successful marketing campaigns that you're doing that is getting the biggest return?
For me, the biggest return is my COIs, my centers of influence. And by that, I mean, I've worked, I was in the financial industry for 25 years. I have a lot of contacts, but not only that is past clients that then refer me clients, that then refer me clients. And just recently, in the last 2 years or so, I've had a whole different niche open up to me. I helped a client from Singapore that was coming over that was a referral from a totally different group that I don't even chat with that often. And so that has helped develop and grow.
Mhm.
And I have helped.
It makes you feel good too when you
Well,
get one from left field you didn't ever expect, right?
exactly. Very thankful. And that has turned into a couple listings, a couple buyers.
Mm,
So that has turned into a wonderful situation. I was on a HGTV show a while back, actually in 2020.
mm.
We filmed in 2019, but it aired in 2020. And I'll never forget, I got my first call of someone that found me on TV and then researched me and was able to find me.
Cool.
And that produced a buyer, which they remotely built a home while they were in California. I was here, and we virtually built their home until they did not walk through the home until right before closing.
Wow.
I'm happy to say they're still
That
homeowners
takes a lot of
here.
confidence. Yeah, I mean, the confidence in you. I've talked to a couple other agents who have dealt with a lot of sight unseen buyers. For some reason, they've been attracted to them, but that takes a lot of trust, credibility for those people to rely on. You're going to be their eyes over here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've helped quite a bit of clients that way as well. And it's such a rewarding feeling when they walk in and smiles ear to ear, and
Right.
this is what we envision.
Thank you for advising me on that. Thank you for helping us select this lot or whatever. Yeah.
And going through the entire process. And then those clients become givers of more clients.
Yeah.
They will refer you business and you don't even have to say much because
Well,
they've done it for you.
touch on that part because I think a lot of people go, "Oh yeah, I want to build a," but that is a marketing campaign. Obviously, you delivering great service. That's step number one, right? The actual transaction you put them through, they appreciated it. But how do you stay top of mind? Because it's not every day that ever someone knows someone ready to buy or sell a house, right? So, what are some of the things that you're doing to reach out and stay top of mind and touch those people?
I really feel like I build relationships with my clients, whether buyers or sellers, whether they move out of state or out of country. I always try to keep it personal. I keep in touch with them via an email or phone call if they're out of country, via apps
Mhm.
that we now have that are wonderful. But just keeping in touch and really caring about them goes a long way. Because at the end of the day, it might be a business transaction, but we are all people, we're all human. So that human interaction is fantastic.
Do you keep because after you build up so many, I know I can, I'm terrible at names. I can tell you what someone's face looks like, but to remember someone's name sometimes if you're not regularly talking to them. That's my good. But do you keep a little file with some notes on them? Like, hey,
Oh,
the
absolutely.
kid's name, dog, whatever kind of stuff.
Absolutely. I'm very fortunate. Knock on wood. So far, my mind's been really good about keeping track of who's what, or something will. I'll look at something. I'm like, oh yeah, they bought this house and they have this many kids and this is what they wanted to do, or they're looking for this as an investment property, or we built that house together. Especially when you're dealing with a build, it could be 6 to 8 to 10 months.
Or
Oh,
longer.
exactly. And that's a relationship. You're not going to forget that person,
Yeah.
right? That's where keeping in touch, I always send them a card at least twice a year, if not more.
For a holiday, birthday, whatever, that kind of
Holiday,
card.
birthday, or just because.
Mhm.
It's interesting when you send something out on odd time, people might remember and they're like, oh, you just sent me this. I've never gotten the card like this before. So
This is, the viral reel, right? I always like to get, obviously our conversation's always great and positive, but I always like to reach out a little bit because I do when there's gossip out, no, that's a gossip, but just scuttlebutt, I guess you
mhm.
could say, from, or dealing with agents on the other side. Obviously, I'm married to an agent, so I hear some of this, like, "Oh my god, you won't believe what this agent did," or how they're talking to me, or that kind of thing. What are you were doing a class at NEFAR talking in front of a bunch of agents of something like not to do or change their mindset. What is like a pet peeve like sometimes you've had in transactions with that agent on the other side that weren't being so collaborative and have the goal of buying and selling a house?
I will say a successful agent will return calls, will answer emails, will communicate. That's probably my biggest pet peeve is when there's zero communication or lack of communication. How are you supposed to get the deal done? And that's huge.
Right.
So I I always try to look at the positive and I always look at everything with positive intent. So if they don't respond right away, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna positive intent and what maybe they are helping, life happens.
Hmm.
So there's always that. But when there's not a collaborative communicative effort, then it just tells me how difficult or easy that transaction is going to be. And if it is a difficult transaction, you're going to remember that.
How important is education, whether it's going to NEFAR are going to, some vendor that supports or another real estate agent putting on something, especially for new agents. Like you said, in that first 6 months, they need to, I forget the actual word you use, but it made me think of this about they really, when you're time blocking that day, you're going to do your prospecting because that's number one. You got to try to, but then the rest of the day, you need to be finding something that's going to grow you in the business, and obviously, educating yourself would be the term for
If you learn something
it.
new every day, it's a good day.
Mhm.
Bottom line. I always feel there's always more to learn. Go seek it, go find it. If it's 30 minutes a day that you carve out to read a book that is going to help you grow, or a technique, or a marketing strategy, or even collaborative coffee, make it happen. Try to schedule twice a week, whether it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or even a glass of wine or coffee, so that you can understand how somebody else is doing things. Ask the question. But if you don't put the effort and if you feel like you've learned it all, you've already lost.
Right, right. I put out there a little tip, and this probably just comes natural to you, but, being with a large builder here in town for, 3 of the last roughly 4 years of my mortgage career, as a loan officer, I wanted to add value, right? So I'm finding, because I knew I'd people calling and getting pre-approved. They can afford this much of a payment, and they're looking for this kind of home. The builders right now, they're reaching out to you like, and this is what we got, this is what they're telling you every day. Then they didn't have to reach out and they had inventory. but they didn't have to do anything because they knew in a matter of days somebody was going to have a contract on it and find it somehow, way or shape or another. But that might be your client that should have had that house. And to take some time, and with all the new construction, and we know I don't know what the percentage of our inventory is new construction, but it's a big part because the existing home sales are very low. To get out and tour these neighborhoods, find out what the builders are, especially if you're new and you don't know, you should be going through these neighborhoods. What are their options? Do they have options? So when your client does call, and then obviously calling those site agents or whatever, say, hey, what? Because a lot of the builders went to spec homes because they realized to build with options, by the time they got the supplies, the cost had gone up, and they had to call the client and say, hey, we got to charge you another 40 grand. So they went and started building spec homes and didn't price them out until they had everything on the ground, then say, okay, yeah, this house is going to cost that. So to know when those inventories are coming on, because I know that there's people moving into the area, they're renting, waiting to find their house to be built, or they to find a house right now. And to take that time to get to know the builders, get to know the site agents that can rely on. I know site agents right now are hungry. So if you get on their list, you get on their mailing list, right? So you know what's going on. But these are all types of things. When you say you're building you said that one of the most important things was having a schedule. They should, if you don't have anything after 1 o'clock, that's probably what you should be doing. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And you're learning.
Mhm.
You're only as good as you know your product, right? So builders, you have to look at as they have a consumer good, and you want to learn as much as you can about it. So then understanding and creating also relationships with their site agent, because they are the ones that know what they have in inventory. They know, and you might get a call tomorrow and say, I need a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, X, Y, and Z. And because you know, and you have that database in your mind, because you have taken the time
Mhm.
to go see those sites and understand locations and what
The
kind of,
schools and
exactly,
yeah.
whatever it is, it helps you narrow down so
Mhm.
that you're not driving all over the city and then realizing, oh, they only wanted to see this portion. Again, it's setting those expectations. What are you looking
Mhm.
for? But absolutely, I feel it's very important. And they used to do it pre COVID, to where we used to get on buses as agents and we used to travel to new
Yeah.
neighborhoods and really get to learn about the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Obviously, some things have changed, but why don't you take the initiative to do it?
Yeah. Because would you agree that a lot of people, because the ones that say that when they look at a real estate agent, they say, oh, you guys, make your own schedule. Yeah, I can take vacation when I want to take vacation, but that doesn't mean because I don't have to actually submit for it and have it approved. I am the boss. That's your free time. You can take vacation when you want to take vacation with knowing that you better have someone covering for you if that's the only dates you can go, or that's the dates you desire to go. You can have that kind of control from that standpoint. But to go back from that, a lot of the socialization, hey, I did my prospecting calls today. I'm worn out from that. You don't want to burn yourself out, but you want to, commit. I see a lot of teams, they commit like 2 hours, 9 to 11 every day. They're going to make so many calls, right? Having lunch with somebody. I forget who said it. One of the personal developments is never have lunch alone. I forget who actually said that, but never go somewhere and eat by yourself. Invite someone to go and interact, and obviously, whether that might be maybe a future client, someone to refer you to somebody, or another real estate agent you might learn something from, right?
Absolutely,
That kind of thing.
absolutely.
But then you do have these. You still have hours of the day to block off times for these little things. And typically the afternoon would be, going around and seeing models. And sometimes in the mornings, there's trainings going on all over town. There's so many of them. All the lenders and title companies are all offering something to bring you in and to take advantage of those.
Absolutely. Take advantage of what's out there. See
Yep.
what's being offered. But with that caveat, don't just go to every single training and and not work on developing your business, because you need to do that as well.
Yeah. Because they're not going to pay you there.
No, well, it's not even that. Is you will be so trained, which is fantastic.
Right.
However, you're not growing your business.
Right.
So The pendulum has to be in the middle. You can't swing one way or the other.
Well, that was something the thought went through my mind earlier in our conversation is how do you, when someone comes on, and imagine you've seen a lot of new agents in 7 years, you know, especially like I
Yep.
said, at Watson, you saw a lot of new agents come in, including yourself. How many don't have a full realization that prospecting, you know, whatever it is, whether it's your circle of influence or you're making cold call, whatever it is, knocking on doors is like 90% of your business. That's what you should be doing 90% of the time.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And that's why, at the beginning, great, you want to learn, absolutely, but schedule yourself. If you go to a training and you take a week and say, okay, I'm going to go to all the training I can this week, you've now lost a week of production.
Mhm.
So make sure that you have a balance. It's super important to grow your influences in your businesses. Have purposely schedule your days. And there's some days that you're going to say, I'm taking a day off. That's okay too, because you do need some downtime. But remember what you put in it.
I have a question here. It's going to take a little thought for you.
Okay.
And the answers could come because I'm going to ask you for three things, and they could just be just any random things. 'Cause I think, like you said, every day you want to learn something new, right? And I think some of that is learning about yourself. Since you've been in real estate, what are the three most important things that you've learned as an agent? Whether it's about yourself, about the business, the three most important things you think you've learned.
That I have personally learned.
Mhm.
That is a good question.
It's kind of a
See,
life question.
it is.
Yeah.
I've had to really dig deep and realize how much patience I really, really need. I have a lot of patience, but it definitely puts it for level when it comes to patience.
Is that both in working with your group as well as clients, or
Overall,
yeah,
overall,
just
overall.
working with people in all aspects of it?
Sometimes the expectation I have in my mind is I ask this question, I should have an answer right away. And it might not be till 24 to 48 hours later that I get an answer. Okay. So those kind of questions,
Mhm.
or, for me, that has been one of the biggest pieces. I would say another piece that I have learned is no deal is the same, but at the same time, everything is negotiable. And I've had to learn that. Pretty good at it now. And the other aspect would be that sometimes it's not a good fit, and that's okay.
And not every client.
Mhm.
Sometimes you have to
Not every client, and
you have to
not every
fire your
team member,
client,
and not every team member,
right?
and that's okay.
The second one, the negotiable. Everything's negotiable. Do you, because the stories you when someone does a successful negotiation, you generally don't hear, unless it was just some just really brilliant, negotiation that closed the deal. But the little negotiations that go on after inspections and that kind of thing that to eventually close the deal, you typically, hey, all right, they'll give you a couple $1,000s in seller concessions. Okay, we'll close. You don't hear those stories a lot. Sometimes do you feel that agents on the other end, if you were able to, again, be in front of that class at NEFAR and talking to agent, not to take the counter offer, not to take when you're going back for it, not to take it personally. Because from the stories that I hear from my side, because, as a loan officer, we're dealing with a loan. Now there's a negotiation going on. And so I hear little bits of it, right? Not necessarily on the call or anything, but sometimes I see the emails go back and forth, but the agent on the other side is taking things a little too personal. They have to actually, you know, work out what's best for your client. But if your client agrees to it, your client agrees to it. They're trying to sell the home. You may think you know everything of why they want to sell the home or their sense of urgency to do it, or for whatever reason. But if they may be at the point where it's like, yeah, $1,000 in repairs. I want that house. Let's do it. I'm not going to give up on. That's the house I want. I like the address. I like the schools. And not to, so the agent on the other side getting kind of putting their ego or their emotions as an agent in between the negotiation.
See, that's the thing. It's not about us.
Yes.
It's about our client. It's what they want. It's what they are looking for. So we have to take ourselves out of the equation. And by that, I mean emotion. Although we get very involved emotionally because we're super excited for them
You're
if they
building
do get a
relationship.
house.
You're trying to
Exactly.
friend. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's not about us. It's about What do they want to do? Our job is to make sure that we provide them all the different pieces, and then they make the educated decision. That's the key.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not about us; it's about our clients.
Well, it takes out the conflict. I think, they're adults. You presented what the other side offered and they agree to it. And, maybe they ask something back and you're going to bat for them and you try to get it and they know you're doing the best. When the deal closes, most of them walk away with smiles on their face. Anyway, that's done. Thank God. Yeah. All right.
Right, and it both ends. I mean, it usually is. It's a celebratory time,
Hmm.
but it's not about us. It's about the client,
Right.
and that is the key. Yes, getting feelings hurt, have thick skin. It's
Yeah.
not about well, this so and so said this about blah, blah. It's what does the client want to do?
Right.
I'm going to provide them the best options and all the options that were given, and then they decide. So not about us.
Do you have anything you'd like to add to our conversation here as we wrap up?
No, I've had a great time.
Yeah.
It's
No, I
been
think
fun.
there's some really I had truly enjoyed our conversation. I think there's a lot of great reels that'll spin off of this. We can splice up what's as we know most people can only take that 30 or 45 seconds at a time. But you had a lot of great stuff I think someone listening to this, we talked about pre-show, a new agent or an agent that's hit their lid is, my first thought is slow down for a minute or call you and have a cup of coffee with you because we talk a lot of times at general levels, but yeah, I try to dig in a little bit, but there's only so much time. And there may be something, as an agent, if you're listening to this and you heard something that Christine said and you're like, I want to know more about that, to pick up the phone and to call you. How do uh, we talk a lot about building relationship with the clients, their
Mhm.
buyers or sellers. That sounds all good, but some people are more, have a natural ability of doing it. Like there's some people that can walk in a room and they can talk to anyone.
Yep.
There's others that are a little more bashful. I'm kind of more the bashful side, but then you start talking to me and then I open up. Sometimes I'm just that's the way I've always analyzed it. Some people just walk in there and they're the life of the party, right? If you don't understand how people are building relationships, to sit down with an agent who's good at building relationships and really break down like some of the little things that you do, like the cards, like the phone calls. What do you say? I think a lot of people are afraid. Well, if what do I say to them? I just call. I mean, troll Facebook. See that they went on vacation, call them. It's a reason to call 'em. "Hey, I saw you went to Italy." Which a lot of people are going to recently. I've seen a lot of that.
Yeah, there's actually I had 2 clients a week
Mm.
apart send me pictures of the Engel and Volkers in Ibiza. So, and they must have been riding the same bus because it was about the same shot.
Right.
And I thought it was pretty funny that they
Yeah.
both said, "Hey, I saw the shops."
Yeah. Yeah,
So
yeah.
they, Italy, Spain, Europe, and even Asia have actually a client in Japan right now,
Oh,
which is
cool,
kind of cool.
cool.
One of my clients went back to Singapore just recently, last week. Oh, it's fun. It's fun. The world is big. Let's explore it. But if somebody wants to reach out,
Yeah.
just pick up the phone. It's just leave me a message if I don't answer or text me. I'll be more than happy.
They I have put out there before, I haven't said this recently, I really would love to have put together, and I go this and I tell the story. When my dad was starting his business when I was, wee little, in the small township that we lived in Massachusetts on Cape Cod, they had a board you could go to of other successful entrepreneurs, say, "Hey, this is what I want to do," or this one, and they give you advice or whatever. That there really should be a real estate board where you have agents, where people who want to be real estate agents can come in and share some of these things, some of these stories. Cause I really think a lot of the reason why there is a lot of agents that move out, 80% don't renew, is because they didn't get off to the right first step. And that first month or 2 or 3 could be very important. And to reach out to someone like yourself and really just, pull some stuff from you. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, it would be great. There's enough business for everybody. It would be
Hmm.
great to see everybody succeed. part of it is realizing, is this the right position for me?
Yeah.
Is this the right career? And
Yeah.
it's not for everybody,
You know.
because you will have a lot of no's, a lot of yeses, and everything in between.
Mhm.
The important part is, if this is what you want to do, then how do we get there?
Yeah.
So,
10-4. Great way
yeah.
to finish. All right. Thanks,
Thank
Christine.
you.
All right.